Welcome to Tools for Time Traveling, the podcast equipping creators to build the future today. Because the future isn't something that just happens to you, it's built by creators of all stripes.
Every episode, we'll talk to a creative industry expert to get a behind the curtains look at the past and present of our creative industries, so you can gain that unfair advantage as you build out the future of your career. This season, we're focusing on music creators and providing strategic tools that help them navigate this often disrupted industry as they take control of their future.
All right, now let's jump into the episode.
I see music marketing really evolving with artists, evolving as creators, those who can create out in the open, who can show the process. That's the future right there, is creator. The future is creator.
You're hearing from Marcus Hollinger. He's SVP of Marketing at Reach Records and co-founder of Portrait Coffee Roasters. We took Marcus through the Future User Tool to paint a picture of the future of fans, the future of artists, and how everyone can prepare. But we caught a couple surprises as we were going through this. It really turned into a discussion of more about how artists need to evolve to meet their fans with where they're headed. So we talked about how music creators can do just that and shift their mindset from acquisition to community, and also what it means to become a generalist.
So yeah, with that being said, let's jump back into it. Welcome to Tools for Time Traveling, the podcast equipping creatives to build the future today. I'm Gavin Guidry, creative director and content creator. Desmond, what's up, man?
Hey, I'm Desmond Dickerson, futurist and marketing director. I was on TV this week. I don't know if I told you that.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that first. Actually, I did see that on ABC News.
Yeah.
How did that come about? What were you talking about?
Yeah, the gentleman has seen some of my previous work on this topic about the future of work and just my insights on foresight and what's going to happen next. So reach out really to understand more about this trend in the workplace around the Great Resignation, right? Just why are people leaving jobs? Where are they going when they leave the jobs? What can companies do to maintain their talent, if at all possible? And listen, it's my day job and I'm focused on, advancing the business there. But I'm not going to lie. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, as the Great Resignation keeps pouring on, people get more flexible in their day jobs or they embrace, this freelancing work more often. Yeah. What's the impact on creativity? Does that mean that the person who was in accounting and they were just boring themselves to death there, now they got a little more flexibility? They're like, you know what, maybe I will pursue this music thing, or you know what, maybe I will get back into painting since I have a little more flexibility over my time. So that's the thing. I'm really excited to see how that plays out in the near future and then long term as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool that just going off of that we get to talk a little bit about the future and who gets to create it. Right. And speaking of that, I was actually doing some reading and watching earlier this week. But did you know that Afrofuturism is actually the brainchild of a jazz musician?
Yeah, I do. So funny story. Just getting back from a trip to Egypt. I'm trying to find the right soundtrack for this trip, right? You gotta have the gram popping off. So I'm looking up songs and I find, I think it was something like Egypt Strut or the Egyptian Orchestra or something like that. And it's this jazz music that's just way out there. I'm like, who is this? What is this? What's going on? I look it up. And of course, it's none other than
Sun Ra.
Yeah, exactly.
Sun Ra, the man, the myth, the legend. It's crazy because everyone talks about 2001: A Space Odyssey and Blade Runner and how that's gotten us these things that we have today, right? But Sun Ra made a film in 1974 called Space is the Place. He has an album of the same name. But this film is actually the origin text of Afrofuturism, which I found super, super interesting. I'm sort of new to this world of futurism and futurist thinking, and you know, have looked a little bit into Afrofuturism as well, and just to see that it basically started as like it started as a film, someone sort of like imagining something, you know, you can call it design fiction. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if you've seen the movie or if anyone listening to this will have seen the movie, but you know, Sun Ra, just a little bit of context. He's a jazz musician, and his part of his origin story is that he was abducted by aliens, and that sort of like set him on his journey, his creative journey. He was just like, yeah, you know, I'm gonna change my name. I'm gonna he dropped out of school, and he just started like creating some of the most like far out jazz music that the world has ever seen, which is pretty dope, and sort of started his obsession with space. And so basically in this film, Space is the Place, he wants to set up a colony of black people in outer space where they can basically live and thrive, since, you know, this is the 60s and 70s. The earth is like inhabitable for black people, and you know, in sci-fi movies, it's like, what do you do when the earth is inhabitable? You move to another planet.
The vibrations are different, not like planet Earth. Planet Earth, sound of guns, anger, frustration. We set up a colony for black people here. See what they can do on the planet all their own without any white people there.
So, you know, he has all these very science fiction-y ways to get them there. Isotope teleportation, transmecularization, but he really decides on teleporting the whole world there through music. So it was just a really interesting imagining of the future from like through the eyes of a musician. And so, yeah, you know, obviously the premise of the movie is really far out. You know, the costumes are really far out. The logic is really far out. But it was really just the fact that Sun Ra was asking these questions through the work. Who am I? What am I? Why am I? Where am I? And what could I do without any hindrances? And that is really what helped spawn the practice and the movement of Afrofuturism. So
it's interesting to hear that as the basis for things, and then you think about like the most prominent or popular, the most popular version of Afrofuturism today would be Black Panther and Wakanda, and you talking about like, oh, he wanted to transport him to this other planet and see how black people could thrive without colonialism or without, you know, white supremacy, and then that idea is taken to even more to the big screen, into like a major motion picture from Marvel Studios, and like really just carrying out those thoughts. That seed that was planted by him, what is this, like 60 years ago now at this point.
Yeah, no, it's great, man. And like, you know, I think that's why we're trying to really push the fact that we're all futurists, because creators really have this ability to just make the impossible, you know. So like in the 60s and 70s, black people envisioning the future, that was not their top priority. It was more the present, like how can I survive in the present. And so you know, just the ability for a musician, a creator, to see, you know, beyond that and really create something that wasn't possible before. So really interesting stuff.
So Sun Ra was clearly a visionary and ahead of his time in many ways. And the challenge that comes with that sometimes is that the fans haven't caught up, the industry hasn't caught up, the world hasn't caught up. But sometimes that's pretty useful, right? Because there are instances where folks get stuck in the mud and the whole industry moves past them. So with inspiration from this, we decided to think about, what tools can we use to solve that tension? We decided to pull out the Futurist tool for future users, right? So the Future User tool, that is a tool that forces you to think about who your customer, who your fan, who your consumer, whatever term you use, who they are today, and then using various inputs to understand who they're going to be in the future. And then with that, you're better able to understand how do you need to position your product, you know, how do you need to roll out maybe a new service, and then how do you need to massage that relationship with them throughout time to make sure that where they're gonna head or where they're gonna end up, you'll be there to meet them and continue that consumer or like customer relationship.
Dope. And then I think, what we want to do with this tool and this conversation that we're having with Marcus, with his experience in music marketing, is to maybe use that future users tool to kind of build like a profile of the future music fan, right? So, we're talking about engaging with fans. That's something that's going to be really important going into the future. So yeah, what is the future fan look like that we need to engage with? So yeah, we got a ton of really interesting insights talking to Marcus, just hearing more about his experience. And actually, so one of the first insights that we pulled came when he was talking a little bit about why he got into music and how he got into music.
Yeah, I would say career-wise, what got me into music was Russell Simmons. Growing up, I was a product of media. I watched a lot of TV. I listened to a lot of music, and when I was younger, I wanted to be a rapper, but I also I would draw a lot, and I also was super into fashion, and I was also always into conversation and debate and all of that. And so I remember when I found out about Russell Simmons, I immediately identified with him because he was the first time I saw someone being able to take what they were interested in and find a common thread and live out of that. And so when I got to college, I knew, everyone's picking their major. And originally I wanted to be in fashion, merchandise, and design. And I had a scholarship to do that. However, it felt very limiting. I didn't want to spend 4 years siloed.
What is it about music that is more, I don't know, I guess like unsiloable, to people in their careers and their creativity?
Yeah, I would say at the time I would think about music and fashion the same way. That instead of picking a career, I was more interested in gaining a skill set so that I could, whenever I felt like it, I could touch in on any of the industries that deal with culture. I'll say this: I'm still in music because music is very fast moving. It's very fast paced. It's very break things and try. It's very relational. And when you start talking specifically about hip hop, there's the gate is not as hell. Hip hop is the language of America. It's America's greatest export. And if you speak the language and you have a little bit of know-how, you can go very far. Whereas with fashion at the time, it was very, very gate kept. The pathways weren't so identifiable. They weren't as accessible. You didn't just meet people who were working in fashion. You didn't just, and so music was more accessible. And to this day, I believe I'm still in it because it's fast moving. It's a lot more liquid. Everything requires music. Fashion needs music. Everything needs music.
Yeah, and it's just like, like as he was saying, like towards the end there, it's like music. You need music for everything. Like you can't have fashion without music. You can't have movies without music. You can't. I mean, there's debatable if you can have life without music. So like it's really it's interesting to think about it in this context of like content and even marketing, and like music. It's again it's the most accessible. It's the most sort of like transcendent, that like kind of gives it this like it kind of gives music content the best type of utility, right? So like if we were to create something called like the index of content utility or something.
Okay.
Music would be really high on there because you can use it for everything. You know, you need a soundtrack for your reel. You need your reels. You need a soundtrack for TikTok. You need whatever. It's music. You know, you make music, just the art form of it, but you also make music videos. You know, you have to score things. Music can really find its way into anything. So yeah, that index of content utility, patent pending, is that rating is really high.
Yeah, I love that. Music has a high index of content utility. That sounds very studied.
Well, you know.
That sounds like very PhD. You know, that sounds like a dissertation statement.
Yeah, and to bring it back to Sun Ra again, he has a quote in Space is the Place that says, "The Earth cannot move without music.
Wow.
The Earth moves in a certain rhythm, a certain sound, a certain note. When the music stops, the Earth will stop, and everything upon it will die."
Wow.
Whew. So yeah, you know, that's kind of it right there. You know, like that music really, gives people something to participate in. You know, the amount of accessibility that it has, it makes it so that, again, everybody can participate in these different creative industries. So as we're sort of like building this future user profile, and we're profiling like the future fan, I wonder if one of the insights that we can put into that is that, music, more than any other art form, gives this future user, this future fan, the freedom to participate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a key insight now more than ever. Before it was just like the way you participate is you dance or you sing along. But now with social media and just other tech tools, there's so many more ways that you can engage, and you're able to participate in whatever the artist is creating.
100%. And we actually talked a little bit about that with Marcus as well. You know, like with us going from Web 2, we're on our way to Web 3. We're not there yet. We're more in a Web 2.5. But fans and users are not just okay with like consuming anymore, like passive consumption. It's not about that. It's more about creation. And we spoke about just that with Marcus.
It's all about a competition for eyeballs right now. Instagram has completely changed their priority as a platform. And you know this. I know this because you know this because you wrote about it. Where Instagram is now, it's not a photo sharing app anymore. It's a creator display. It's Netflix. It's YouTube. Instagram is probably more YouTube than people realize, which is TikTok is Google meets Snapchat. So I use Instagram to now find creators who are making things so that I can learn how to make things, which is completely different. It used to be, I want to look at some photos, I want to show some photos. So it used to be, there was this voyeurism to social media. People still want to be social, but now that with the term creator starting to be the great catch-all, more and more people are realizing like, oh, I'm a creator too. So if I'm going to continue to opt into this app, let me create something too. If everybody around me is creating and everybody's making these tutorials and these how-tos, well, shoot, let me join, let me make something. And so that's another thing that it seems like folks are coming to these apps to figure out and to participate. They want to participate. So they're like, yo, if you put the music sheet in there, I give you $50 for the vinyl, no doubt. Or they want to see you upload, okay, if you promote a song, we'll do a duet on TikTok so I can participate. you know,
or send me a stem player so I could
or
listen
send
to
me a
it.
stem player so I could mess with the stems and you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
make the music, recreate your song in my format.
Yeah. So as Marcus was saying, the fandom, it used to be so much more about like this kind of like voyeuristic thing, like you're watching your idols or you're watching people. It was just like a one-way channel, right? But now people want to participate. Like you're not just a fan anymore, like you're a creator as well, and like that intersects with your fandom of these artists. And as you're giving them these tools, you're allowing them to co-create, then you start to realize that like these fans, these creators that are fans, they can also be leveraged to evangelize your brand, your message, your product to other fans, right? So it's like, all right, your song comes out, it reaches X amount of people through the channels that it's gone on. Maybe it's on radio, maybe it's on TV, there's like YouTube videos, right? But then you've got a super fan who makes a reaction video to it on TikTok, right? Now all the people that follow them, that are interested in what they do, like it's almost, it becomes like a pyramid scheme to a point, you know, where like you reach your influential fans, they influence other people, and then it just grows from there.
Yeah, but like the most positive and creative kind of pyramid scheme.
Right.
A pyramid scheme that everyone wants to be a part of.
Yeah. So I guess less of a pyramid scheme and more of a, I don't even know if there's a proper word for it, but it's just like, it's fun. Like everyone gets to be a part of it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's really interesting. I've been trying to do as much like writing and thinking about this as possible, but it's like, we're in this time where social media platforms are transitioning to creator platforms, and they're really wanting to, target and cater to creators. But it's not only creators or, the traditional way that you would think about it. Like this transition, I think, as we're seeing, and we talked about with Marcus, it's affecting fan behavior too. So, again, going back to the future users tool, I wonder if like the future fan will come to expect opportunities for collaborating with their favorite artists, or tools to put their own spin on music rather than just sort of like passively consuming it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. It's almost like it just blurs that line even more. Like, are you a fan or are you an artist in your own right? And what happens there. But even, taking that a step further, these fans of the future, they care more about how the artist can help them explore their creativity. So it's not just passively listening and sitting here. It's like, no, this person has made me a more creative person. Like their music gets me in the right vibe to enhance my art.
Yeah, and I think this also opens the door for future fans who will be okay, with paying to play. I think like a lot of what's gotten us to this point in music was like finding ways to get music for free. But I think in this sort of like, if in this realm where we're making music more of a participatory thing, that opens up the door and the willingness of fans to actually want to pay to play, like a video game. So as opposed, so like it's not like, okay, I'm just paying for the music, but to go back to the Kanye stem player example, I'm paying for the music, but I'm really paying to be a co-creator. So I think that really opens the door for, fans of the future will be open to, pay to play, if you will.
Yeah, and it's like, we see the model today, like folks, artists are like, I don't make enough off of streaming. So I could see a future where a fan is like, man, all right, I'm going to stream it just because I want to hear it. I want to get familiar with the music. But then there's something like, I don't know if you remember that video game, Guitar Hero, right? Like imagine it's something like that where like you buy that or you pay for some sort of like service. It's like, all right, cool. Not only do I love to hear the song, but like I'm enjoying like playing it. I'm enjoying remixing it. I'm enjoying adding my own little mix to it. And then that just becomes a whole part of the fan experience.
But then I think that also in turn becomes sort of like a part of the artist experience, the creator, the music creator experience.
Yeah.
Because then you have all of these, these people are creating content with your music. So it's almost like, we can think of them less as fans and more as like members of your like creative team or your like virtual entourage or something like that.
Yeah, I absolutely could see that. Like, as you're an artist, if you envision it in that way, like that very futuristic way, I think that's very helpful because, honestly, fans always had these desires to co-create, but the market hadn't caught up yet. So like back in the day when like, Michael Jackson dropped a new video, kids are learning that choreo and they're just like doing it with their friends, but there's no place for it to go. But now someone drops a song, oh, boom, I'm learning this choreo or creating choreography to go with the song, and then bam, now it's on TikTok. Before you might create a music video to your favorite song and the label will be like, oh, we suing them, like it's a wrap, get this off the internet, like no free music, get that out of here. But now, whether it's TikTok or some of these other platforms, when you create those things, like now there's a market for it. Now there's a receptive audience on the artist side and in the broader fan community.
Yeah, nah, man. Future fans are cool. I like this.
So as we were chatting with Marcus, he hit on something really interesting, and it's kind of specific to his niche, right? He works for a Christian rap music label, and talked about how at times like the music came off kind of corny, or like, oh, it's outdated, or it wasn't up to par with other hip hop.
Y'all don't remember the Holy Hip Hop movement? Come on, man. Don't act like you don't know.
So as he's talking about that, there's insights to be found around that as well. It's like, all right, well, when the music is right, when the music is hidden, like what does that do? Like, how does that impact the listener?
They want to hear and engage with music that is encouraging to their walk, faith-wise. And they want something that they can be proud to show their friends. And in years past, Christian music has gotten a bad rap for not being as current or as captivating as secular music. So while an individual might listen to it, they may have a barrier to share it with their friends out of sort of this sense of the quality may not be there, or it just may not resonate. But with us, we built this brand trust around the music is going to be faithful to the message that you believe in, but also it's going to be something that you can be proud to play for your friends.
So yeah, what we took from that really is like, not just fans, but especially like the core fans, they really take pride in what they're listening to. Like when it becomes a part of their like identity, like it gives them pride, it gives them confidence. So by like supporting those artists, like they feel pumped up themselves.
Yeah. So, in the same way that we were saying that music, has this high index of content utility and people can co-create now and use music as a tool. I think this is just another way to say like, yeah, music is a really useful tool, but not just to create, also to just like belong. And have community and, a community of people that you identify with. They share the same, they share similar identities to you.
Right.
So yeah, I think that future user is really, if we're going to extrapolate this to the future user, they're really like still going to want community and intimacy. And I was listening to an episode, a podcast episode about the future of music with Will Page. He was like the ex chief economist at Spotify. Really smart guy. If you should look him up if you don't know. But one of the quotes he had in this podcast was, "You can't scale intimacy," right? And so he was talking about making mixtapes and things like that. But those are things that people create community around. There's intimacy around making mixes, or there's intimacy around sharing an identity with someone, and you can't scale that through you don't get more of that through more streams and more views and things like that. So yeah, I think it's really interesting that people are definitely still gonna want that community and that intimacy.
Yeah, and it's been around, like people wanting an intimate connection with the artist. Even like 20 years ago, Eminem was like, "Oh, stand, like these are the stands." Like they want more. They don't
Yeah.
want to just hear it. Like they want to touch you. They want to be with you. And it's funny how that term has kind of grown into this other thing. It's like stan culture, when people are just so obsessed, or they've made an artist so much a part of their identity that they're just like hopping on the internet, and anyone that's talking about that artist, they're jumping to their defense, or they have something to say about it. And
Yeah.
it's almost like this like stan culture was inevitable. It was inevitable once fans had these outlets, once they had social media to showcase their artist influence identities, right? Like before, they would just be like, obsessed individuals. But now it's like, oh, there's a whole community out there of people that like just absolutely adore Nicki Minaj or Billie Eilish or whoever else. Like, yeah, like I found my tribe. These are my people. However unhealthy that tribe could be at times.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
The flip side, though, the flip side of that is something really interesting also that Marcus shared with us. He was talking about, going on the road. He was in Dallas, they was doing a tour or whatever, and comes across this nightclub that's in Dallas. But this nightclub's a little different. Like this whole nightclub is dedicated to Christian hip hop. Like that's all they play. Like that's the whole vibe there. So that also goes back to what you were saying. Like no matter how many streams those artists are getting, like that intimacy of that particular nightclub, like it's only in that nightclub. You can't recreate that digitally. Like as you said, like intimacy doesn't scale. You've got to have it where it is. And when artists focus too much on the digital side of things, the virtual side of things, they may be thinking they're being futuristic, but it could mean that they're missing out on some of these physical hotbeds for their fans. So honestly, I think moving forward, I think there's going to be even more space, more opportunity for artists to influence their fans and for fans to build identities around people. Because like if you kind of look at like societal trends, right? Like people are losing faith in traditional institutions, whether that be, government or school systems or even like churches, right? Like people just don't go to church now as much as they did, 20 years ago, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So as that happens, more and more people are losing faith in traditional institutions. There's more opportunities for artists to fill that gap and for them to build communities around that, feeling that need and allowing their fans to have something to latch onto.
Man, no, 100%. I love that. Yeah, and I think just to wrap this point up, just looking at where the creator economy is now, it's and creator platforms and things like that, it's really all centered around community. So I think it's just safe to say that future fans are all in some sort of community.
Yeah.
And that it's interesting because we started this conversation with Marcus to sort of like build a profile for a future user, and that user being a fan. Who's a future fan, and how will music creators in the future, or how can music creators in the present understand who that fan will be,
Right.
so that they can prepare. But talking about community, talking about advancements in technology, talking about the convergence of everyone into being a creator, we also just like ended up having a full section of our talk with Marcus that was based in what does the future music creator look like. So not just a future fan like we thought we were going to talk about, but also like a future musician. So yeah, we were sort of like inspired to switch it up, as he was sort of talking about how he pushes his artists, the artists who are signed to Reach Records, to kind of like understand who they are before even going after their fans.
If you're thinking about the future of music, it's probably a little more helpful to think about, well, what's the future of my music if you're a creator? Case in point, someone, or take Doja Cat, for example. I remember listening to Doja Cat back in 2016 because I thought her name was dope. And I listened to it and I was like, man, I don't get it, but I like it. I just don't get it. So maybe later, whatever. And she putting out records for a really long time. And she dropped this uh, mood thing. And it went crazy online. Dressed up as a cow, not being serious, being viral. And that skyrocketed her to, she went from obscure artist making music that you probably couldn't wrap your head around unless she was speaking right to you, to internet meme, to Grammy winning global sensation. So I like to talk about her to reinforce the point that artists and creators should be looking and saying, well, what's going on with me? Who's listening to me and where are they going? Am I going where they're going? Am I serving them? I don't think everyone can replicate Doja Cat's success, but I do think everyone can learn from what she did in that she really was able to identify what and who she was and do certain things at the right moment that now gives her the opportunity to participate within the larger framework or within the larger cultural trend, something like TikTok, something like if she wanted to do NFTs, I think she would do great at it. But it has everything to do with how she leveraged who she was being sort of and she kind of had that internet girl anime thing from the beginning. And people liked that back when that was more of a subcultural thing. She kept that and she leveraged it until now people really take her. She's a Grammy award winning artist now. I would encourage the music creator to build in the open. What I mean by that is it's a term that is pretty regular in the startup space where if you're launching a company, you can't just go away, secretly get your funding and then push a product on the market. People really want to see you build. They want to see you struggle out in the open. They want to see you build out in the open. And then as you grow, they want to grow with you. I think for an artist, I would encourage them to embrace that mindset. Build out in the open. Don't look for the biggest budget to solve all your problems. Don't look for the best tools, the best collaborators. Build where you are, because in the long run, people will appreciate the journey.
Yeah, it's kind of like he's saying that as an artist, how can you find a community that's going to support your music when you're not a part of a community yourself, right?
Right.
And like, how can you want fans to be a super fan of you when you haven't completely explored what you like and what you're into? Yeah. How do you really find that place? I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it was. I mean, he was getting into some philosophical, like, he was like therapist Marcus. He was Dr. Hollinger for a minute, like, how somebody gonna follow you? You don't even know who you are.
Exactly.
But that's key, man. It is key, because that's essentially what's happening. Like, when you're an artist, like, people are following you, and it's just like, it's critical when you're a leader of any type to just like know who you are, like know what has meaning to you, know what has value to you. And then it's almost like the more in depth, the more intimately you know yourself, like there's so many universal truths that we all share as humans. And like when you tap into those very deeply, whatever you thought was the most specific thing to you that like only I have experienced this, you kind of find out like, nah, like someone wasn't right there in that moment with you, but they had a very similar experience. And that is why they're drawn to you, or you're drawn to one another in community.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and it's almost like, just going off that Doja Cat example, you don't seek to sort of like gain a community as much as just trying to be a part of one, right? Like his example, Doja Cat, like she was.
What do you mean by that? Yeah.
Yeah. So Doja Cat was like, she was in the like deep internet, right? Like she was into all, you know, she was.
Yes, she was.
She was just super into internet culture. She was into, you know, like all the weird chat rooms and stuff that almost got her canceled actually a couple years ago. People forget that, but
Yeah.
but yeah, you know, what she was doing was gaining. She was a part of a community that helped honed who she was. So that, you know, when she started so that when she comes out with music and even the subject matter of her music, it's all applicable to a certain community.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, so, you know, going back to like, you know, philosophical therapist Marcus, it's like artists, you know, artists of the future will need a level of self-awareness to connect or resonate with fans. Like they've got to know what they're into, you know, and does that track with what some other people are into?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then just like the new way artists will have credibility, it might be less around like, oh, so and so is co-signing me, and more like this community co-signs me. Like, oh, yeah, I know like artist X. Oh, they've been, you know, in the message boards. They've been in this online community. Like they've been a part of this like online movement. Like, you know, I know them from that. Like, yeah, they legit. That's music they're making. That's true to who they are, and I rock with it because I've seen the journey or whatever that is. And then you've got those built-in advocates.
100%. And I think it's really interesting to, you know, talk about like artists needing to be in community, and hear something that Marcus had to say about sort of like the future and how it, you know, it does belong to Gen Z, and who's the Gen Alpha, I think, is the generation that's coming up. But there's also like older artists who are doing a really good job at finding those communities, being a citizen of those communities, being an active participant in those communities, and really finding success the same way a lot of these younger artists are.
I look at what's happening in Web3, and the future looks a lot to me as if it belongs to, on the one hand, Gen Z inherently, but then on the other end, I look at like Snoop, who just went and bought the Death Row catalog, and within the NFT space made something, I think some $40 million or something like that the first week he had the Death Row catalog, selling it as NFT. So it's this really interesting thing. I also look at Nas, who has been rapping for a very long time, and he put together one of the best 3-album runs in a span of 2 years that have probably happened in the last 5 years. As an elder statesman in hip hop, he's participating. I look at Pusha T dropped a single with Jay-Z last Friday, and Jay-Z at 50 plus years old is trending on Twitter for his verse. So in a lot of ways, if I'm looking at what's happening with Gen Z, if I look at the ways that some primarily hip hop elder statesmen are participating in these new and exciting ways, I look at the future and I say, well, it really belongs to those who are fearless enough to get out and either use the tools that are available or just continue to participate.
Yeah, it was just such an interesting comparison, kind of going like, when we talk about the future of music, we're thinking Gen Z, but like Gen X or millennials, like they've got a seat at the table as well. And it's been really fascinating to watch, you know, whether it is Nas and the work that he's been doing in the like startup community and like even like rapping about like cryptocurrencies and understanding that better, or you got somebody like Snoop Dogg who you know, recently got, I think, like, you know, branding and marketing rights around the Death Row brand, pulling that off
Yeah.
streaming, and now like he's trying to like reformat it as NFTs. So
Yeah.
in some ways, like, so the future obviously belongs to Gen Z, but older artists, they're also finding success with some of those same methods. So you see the pioneers of yesterday are essentially now the followers of the future, and they're almost like just emulating what they see from the youth, not artistically, but in the tools and the way that they use them.
Totally. Yeah, and it's just like, maybe the future has less to do with age and which generation you're a part of, and more to do with like both your authenticity, right? Like all of the examples that we've been talking about, Nas, Jay, Snoop, all incredibly authentic, but also they're sort of like followers and students first. So I think that could be that's a potential future artist trait, is that they'll sort of need to be followers and students first.
Yeah, absolutely.
And success is probably going to have less to do with ability or even like how cool you are, and more about how nimble and how adaptable are you.
Yeah, for sure. It's just like in business, if you ride the wave or you jump onto the new thing, the new scene, and you jump on at the right time, like you're allowed to ride that wave and ride to success. And I think artists will just have to look to business or look to younger people and see how they remain adaptable and adopt that as well. So after talking to Marcus about the future of fans, and a little bit about the future of artists and how they'll meet those fans, we decided to discuss like, what's that intersection, right? Where do they meet? And that's the marketing side of it. So we asked him, what's the future of music marketing?
I see music marketing really evolving with artists, evolving as creators who can leverage the tools that are accessible to them to reach the very same people who are either using the tools or showing up where the tools have created platform like Instagram, and how they're rewarding creators in general and musicians who can position themselves as creators, those who can create out in the open, who can show the process of what they're creating. That's going to really play a large part in where the space goes. The NFT community is very much like that too, where folks really gravitate toward, are they verify the NFT by the process? Are they uploading photos of themselves in their studios? Are they daily engaging in DAOs and speaking the Twitter language? That is what is making the difference in the NFT space, which I think is also that authenticity, that consistency, that true creator nature is what I think will shape the future of music marketing.
That's cool. Do you see, just question going based off that, do you see the term creator sort of like blending together, right? So like there's not really like content creators and music creators and fashion creators. They're just like creators nowadays.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's the term that really that's the future right there, is creator. The future is creator, because recorded music, in a lot of ways, the value of recorded music is not consistent for everyone. Rihanna became a billionaire through Fenty, and I don't know what her contract situation is, but I doubt we get another album from her unless she just one day rolls out of bed and decides she wants to do that. So that again is signaling to a lot of artists. There's another musician. Her name is, I'm trying to think of her name. She's an NFT creator who was also a musician, and she just wasn't making money with music, but she started participating in the NFT space and she crushes. And that creator hat is giving musicians a way to diversify and find income. There's an Atlanta artist named Bosco. She's an artist. She's also got an agency built around her that she built, that she's running. I think so.
Yeah, I love that. Like the
Yes.
future is the future is creator.
Yeah.
You know, I think, yeah, you know, again, we were just talking about like it has less to do with age and more to do with, you know, how nimble you are and how adaptable you are. But really, that just is going to say that the future is for the creator. So, you know, I wonder if that means like the word creator is going to become more and more all encompassing. And so instead of people only wanting to be musicians, rappers, you know, painters, photographers, they'll just see themselves as creators in the future.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of you know, that series you were working on before, where it's like the slash, right? The multi hyphenate, or what was the term you were using?
Hyper creative.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. Like it's more converging into that hyper creative, and it's honestly really interesting. So many artists, like people will later find out, like, oh, did you know they could do that too? Like someone like a Donald Glover, like he could have just went through life like just being a comedian, right? And like an actor, and then folks will be like, oh, it's interesting. And then like, oh wait, did you know he could rap too?
Yeah.
And like he's a songwriter, he kind of sing, or you know, just so many other musicians. Like, oh, did you know that like they also like to draw? Like that was something that was really random. I remember there was this episode of 106 at Park. So clearly this is way back in the day. And Beanie Siegel's on there. He's on there with State Prop, and they're talking about whatever. And he was like, yeah, Beanie Siegel is very grimy rapper, like very like hardcore, and he's talking about like, oh, like I'm working on this comic book, and he was just like showing his drawings of like kind of like, you know, stylized like little kid versions of him and his like fellow artists, and like this comic that he was just working on. So I think it is really fascinating. What would it look like if he came back into the public eye as a comic book artist and was, you know, writing comics, and then also maybe making music that would serve as the soundtrack to these other art pieces.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Yeah, so it's like, you know, artists of the future will position themselves as creators in general, not just solely musicians.
Yeah,
interesting stuff.
Absolutely. And you know, and hopefully also we see a lot more of that lifestyle content. You know, if some random person can be on the gram, like, you know, here's what they did today, or here was the background of their work day. Like, yo, I want to see a musician's work day. Like, show me more of that content. I think it was Calvin Harris a couple of years ago. He showed like how he made a particular beat for the song that he did with Migos. Like, I love that content, and I hope to see, you know, more of that, like more of the tutorials. Like, hey, this is how you make a hit record, or this is how, you know, you coin a new phrase that's going to change the world, or whatever that is. Like that's the creativity I love to see more of from artists. So as a recap, this conversation and all the responses we got from Marcus was built around the Future User tool. That's a foresight tool that allows, you know, businesses or organizations or even artists in this case to think about, you know, who is their fan today? Like, who's that present day fan? How do they engage with them? What are they into? And then you start to think back of like, okay, who did they used to be in the past? And then you compare those insights to figure out who are the new fans that are emerging? What are the new fan behaviors, the new consumers? What are they going to be like maybe 10 years from now? What are their needs going to be, their preferences, their cultural identities? And then from there, it's all about how does that brand, how does that artist, how does that product, how do you start to understand how you'll fit into that future fan's lifestyle, how you'll be able to better serve the needs that they have.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, thanks for introducing us to this tool. Like, I think it's just been really cool to go to sort of like move through this conversation we had with Marcus using that tool, and I think we surfaced some really interesting things, like you know, the future of the fan is more about community and being active in a community. So, you know, with that being said, using this tool, like we can start to think about other things that we can create in the future. Like it could be cool to, you know, like create networks of creator communities where music and the content from music creators can be just more of like a rallying cry or like an anthem or a soundtrack to that community. You know, and then another thing, like using this tool, we kind of understood that it was less about just the future user as the fan, and also the future user as who's the future music creator. And it really seems like it's going towards like these music creators being more general creators. So, you know, what tools can we make? What things can we make that will give creators, you know, tools and resources to become better, more nimble and plugged in creators? I think that's something that we should definitely think about down the road.
Yeah. So, you know, this is for not just the artists and how they're thinking about the ways they need to show up to meet their fans in the future, but also for those entrepreneurs, for those inventors and those like just innovative people thinking about how can you provide these tools? How can you provide the resources that will, you know, allow for those intersections to take place?
Dope. Well, yeah. Hopefully, you guys were able to learn some new things, some new tools. You know, go listen to Sun Ra. Space is the place. You know, listen to the record. You could watch the film on YouTube, I think. And yeah, you know, let's keep you know, using these tools to sort of inspire our own creativity.
All right. Until next time. Thanks for tuning in.